بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك وعلمنا من لدنك علما ينفعنا في الدين والدنيا الكريم. أما بعد, praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, we are up to Kitab Al Janazah, which is a book of funerals. Before we start, inshallah, it's important to talk about a few points regarding death before we go into the details of the funerals. So, Kitab Al Janazah, the book of funerals, is usually mentioned after Salah. So, it is a type of Salah, but there's other things other than Salah in Kitab Al Janazah. So, you can either consider it part of Salah, you can consider it a separate chapter, fiqh between Salah and between Zakah. But after you finish talking about Janazah, there's no other Salah that you talk about in fiqh. That's the first thing. Now, generally, the focus of fuqaha when we talk about Janaiz is about how to wash the body, how to clothe the body, how to dress the body, how to carry the body, and how to pray on the body, and then in the end, how to bury the body. That's it. But in larger books of fiqh, we go into extra detail. So one important thing to remember is that death, according to Ahl Sunnah, is another stage of life. And it is not adam, it's not the end, it's not the end of life, but it's actually a new life. So we believe that after death, people go into another episode, a different type of life, where the focus is more on their soul than it is on their body. So in this world, we find that a lot of what we do is focused on our physical bodies, So we need to breathe and eat and drink and do all of these things, and this is the focus of most of the people in the world. After death, you don't need any of this, and the focus is on your soul. Although the scholars say your body does have some connection to your soul in the grave, but the focus is on your soul. Now, if someone is on their deathbed that hasn't passed away, there's also actions in fiqh that they mention. So the scholars say when someone is starting to pass away, they're in the state, the beginning of death, it is sunnah to place them on their right towards the qibla. Place them on the right side, facing towards the qibla, similar to the way you bury someone when they pass away. And similar to the way someone prays when they're not able to sit down, they have to lie on the right side. Similar to that, so you face the qibla, and that is the sunnah. Now, when the person is in this stage, our priority should be that the person dies saying La ilaha illallah. So this is called Takfeen. Yeah? So what happens is someone sits next to him, person that he loves, person of knowledge, person of respect, and he tells him to say, or he says, La ilaha illallah. In the books of fiqh, they say, La ilaha illallah is enough. You don't even need to say Muhammad Rasulullah, because there's a hadith that Rasulullah says, Man kana akhir kalam min dunya, la ilaha illallah, yakhul jannah. His last words in this world, wa la ilaha illallah, will enter Jannah. So our priority is for his last words that he utters. He says, La ilaha illallah. If he starts to talk and goes into other topics later on, we can remind him again. But our priority should be that he dies saying La ilaha illallah. And this is his last and final words in the dunya. Now, someone who is passing away, there's also manners that they should apply. Someone is passing away, they shouldn't, if someone is not passing, if someone is in a normal stage of life, we should always be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should have a little bit of fear in us. When someone is passing away, they should have hope more than they have fear. So they should have more hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than they have fear. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am going to treat my slave the way he thinks about me. So the priority of someone passing away should be that they think the best of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hope that they get Jannah. They hope that their sins, inshallah, will not be held against them and stuff like that. Now, once someone passes away, their eyes should be closed. Because the norm is that the eyes follow the soul, follow the ruh when the ruh leaves the body. So the eyes should be closed and the jaw should be held with a cloth. So a cloth is tied from the bottom of the jaw on top of the head, like similar to something like that they use. Yeah. So there's they tie like a bow on top of the head, and that way it holds the jaw in. In the old days, they didn't have hospitals and stuff, so it would be easy for animals and insects to enter the body through the mouth. So generally, it's important to shut the jaw and to tie it with a cloth. This is all before we get into washing the body or anything like that. Also, they say that the joints should be softened. And the way you soften the joints is by bending the arm and then placing it back. Bending the leg and placing it back. So you soften the joints so it doesn't stiff up from the beginning. And of course, the body is then covered with a light cloth. And something with a bit of weight in it is placed on the stomach. Something holds the stomach firm so that it doesn't puff up and inflate this. Once we decide to wash them, or just before we wash them, of course, like when someone's passed away in the bed, the clothes are also removed off them. Once we have cloth on top, they're covered, we remove their clothes, and they're faced with on a bed or something similar. And this is all done by the most gentle of their relatives, or the mahrams of them. Now, washing the body should be prioritized and done as fast as possible. We shouldn't delay washing the body. Let's get into the details of this book, inshallah. So Abu Shujā says, فصلا ويلزم في الميت 4 أشياء: غسله وتكفينه والصلاة عليه ودفنه، واثنان لا يغسلان ولا يصلى عليهما: الشهيد في معركة المشركين والسقط الذي لم يستهل صارخا.
4 things are required to be done for the deceased: A. Washing, B. Shrouding, C. Performing the funeral prayer, and D. Burial. 2 who are not washed or prayed over: number 1, someone martyred while battling the polytheists, and number 2, a fetus that did not show signs of life.
Okay, so like I said, there's 4 duties that we have to do. Someone passes away: to wash them, to clothe them, to bury them, to pray them. Now, generally, most Muslims should be washed. Most Muslims should be washed and clothed and prayed on. If someone is an apostate, so they have entered Islam and then left Islam, they're known as murtad, or someone is known as a muharib, someone who is fighting the religion, someone who is aggressive against Islam and fighting the religion, and there's no kind of treaty between us and them, then this person, if they pass away, they do not need to be washed, they do not need to be buried, and it's haram, of course, to pray them. Now, if we decide to bury them, it's fine, it's not haram, but there's no need to do that. But of the people who need to be washed and buried and prayed, there are a category who must be buried and clothed, but they cannot be washed nor prayed on. Okay? Or they don't need to be washed and prayed on. Some cases, like the shaheed, yeah? That's, they don't need to be washed at all. We bury them in their blood. And others don't need to be washed. So a shaheed, like I said, doesn't need to be washed, and he can't be prayed on, and we just bury them where they are. But of course, we clothe them. A dhimmi or mu'ahad, someone who has a treaty between us and them, or someone who is a resident in the land. If it's a Muslim land, they're a resident in that land, and they have certain conditions to fulfill. These people, of course, we don't pray on them. We don't pray on them, but of course we bury them and we take care of them, and we're not allowed to disrespect them miscarriage, a little baby is a miscarriage basically, then it depends on the case of the body. So if there's no proof of life, there's no crying. Sorry, if there's proof of life, there's crying, there's coughing, there's an action that happened after birth, and then it dies straight away, then they're treated like an adult. They're washed, buried, and prayed on. If they don't make any sound or action, and we can't tell if they are alive or not, but there's a clear human shape. They look like a person, there's hands, feet, and there's a feature of a person, then they are washed and buried but not prayed. And if nothing is clear, so it's just a piece of flesh, then it is wrapped and buried, but not prayed on, not washed. Now, the last thing to talk about here is that sometimes in natural disasters, we find a part of a person and we can't find the rest of the body, a hand or a foot, or even the smallest part of a person. So if a part of a person is found, if this part is separated from a Muslim, from a human, while they are living, while they are alive, then nothing needs to be done to them. But it's sunnah to also bury that part out of respect. Generally respecting the part of a person or any part of a Muslim is really encouraged. If it's from a Muslim who's passed away, okay, and that person had not been washed and prayed on, then it must be washed, wrapped, and buried. Like I said, if salah was done on the rest of the body, then that's okay. But if not, then it also must be prayed on. Okay. شجاع says after that, ويغسل الميت وترا ويكون في أول غسله سدر وفي آخر شيء كافور ويكفن في ثلاثة أثواب بيض ليس فيها قميص ولا عمامة.
Washing the deceased. The deceased is washed an odd number of times. Low tree is used in the first washing and a bit of camphor in the last. The shroud. The deceased is shrouded in 3 white garments, which do not include a long shirt or turban.
Okay, so the second right that a dead person has upon us is to wash their body once they pass away. Now, minimum washing is like minimum ghusl. It's like minimum ghusl, compulsory ghusl that we have. So the minimum washing is for water to cover the whole entire outer body, the whole entire outer body. And that doesn't include the nose and mouth, but it includes all the parts that need to be washed in ghusl. Now, if someone drowned, we also have to wash them. So we can use the sea, but we have to move them in a way that the water covers them. The sea water alone by itself is not enough. Okay, so it has to be, the washing has to be done by a person, by a human being. It can't be done by the sea itself. Now, you don't have to have intention when washing the body. This is the only difference between this also and compulsory also. Intention doesn't have to be here because the person himself can't intend. So it's only sunnah to make intention. But the rest of the steps need to be done when washing the body. So if someone drowns in the ocean, we also need to cover them with water and wash the body. Okay. Now the preferable way to wash is not by just washing them once. The preferable way is to begin by raising the body up. So it's lying down at the beginning and you raise it up. And for the left hand of the person washing the body to run over the stomach multiple times. So to go over the stomach multiple times with a bit of weight, but not too heavy of course, so that anything that is extra inside the stomach can come out and doesn't come out after praying on the person or after washing the person, and it would be disrespectful to the body to have that happen. After that is done, okay, the private parts are washed. Even if nothing comes out of the private parts, it's also sunnah to wash them, but it's not compulsory. If something comes out, then they must be washed, of course, before we continue the ghusl. The teeth are then cleaned with a wet towel, with a wet cloth. So wet the cloth, clean the teeth of that person. This is all sunnah, of course. It's not compulsory. And similar is done with nose and ears. So you get a wet towel and you clean that part of the body. Wudu is then done on the body. So we do wudu on the person, but carefully. When we do the mouth and nose, of course, the head is tilted so that water doesn't go inside the body, and that would, of course, harm the body or even maybe come out of the person from the other side. After that, the hair and if the person has a beard also are washed with sidr. Sidr is similar to soap. So it's a leaf of a tree that is crushed and mixed with water, and it has bubbles. It's similar to soap. So the hair is washed with sidr if it's around, and also the beard. And if they're not on ihram, they didn't die in Hajj or Umrah, then we also brush the hair. Brush the hair if it's tangled up and messed up. After that, we start with the actual ghusl. These are all things to do before washing the body. The whole body is then washed 3 times. As soon as you do it, 3 times, and we can go up to 7 times also. The compulsory part is 1. So the first time you wash the body, it should have sidr. So water mixed with sidr, like soapy water, kind of like soapy water. Water that has something in it that helps remove the dirt off the body, basically. The second time, removes that sidr water, and the third time is pure water, but it has something called kafur. In English, the name of it is camphor. Is that no? Camphor. Has anyone seen it? It's also something that has a nice smell. It gives a nice smell to the water. You put a little bit in the water, but don't make the water change totally and become a different thing. Now, the minimum of the best way to wash the body is 3 times, but better than that is to wash it 5 times. Once with sidr. The second time, removing the sidr. And then 3 times with clean water. 3 times with clean water with a bit of camphor in it. And better than that is 7 times. And there's all different ways to do it. So you can start with sidr and remove it, and do sidr again, remove it. So many different ways that we explained a few of them in Salat Al Janazah. But generally, if you mix them up in different ways, it's generally okay, as long as we start to remove and then we end with, or we finish up with clean water. Now, who should wash the body? Okay, who can wash the body? Before we talk about that, if something comes out of the body after being washed, then that part of them must be cleaned before we pray, but also doesn't have to be repeated on the body. Now, the person must be from the same gender as the person who passed away. So a lady can't wash a man, and a man can't wash a lady, other than 4 cases: husband and wife. They can wash. So a husband can wash his wife. The wife can wash her husband even if she remarries. How could someone remarry before her husband is buried? In one case, the iddah or the waiting period can finish before he's buried, and that is if she's pregnant and then the husband passes away. A pregnant woman's iddah ends once she gives birth. Should she give birth immediately, then she would be free to marry whoever she wanted, to do an act. They say that still washing the body is still permissible in that case because she still inherits him and she's still attached to him in some way. But if she's divorced, no, she can't. If she's divorced, she can't wash him. A person with their mahram, in certain cases they can also wash their maharim, although it's not preferred to wash their maharim, but it can be done. And then someone young from the opposite gender. So someone who touching them doesn't break the wudu. Someone young, they can also be washed by the opposite gender, and it doesn't have to be from the same gender. Now this is who can wash the body, but there's an order of who is best to wash the body. Who's best to wash? Number 1, for a man, his father, or the father of his father, or the father of the father of his father. Just keep it going up until with no limit. If there's no fathers there or grandfathers there to wash the body, then his son, or the son of his son, or the son of the son of his son. If we don't have either of these, then his full brother, his brother from both parents, should watch his body. If there is no brother, then his half brother, his brother from his father's side, of course. If this is not available, then the son of his full brother and his son, etc. If this is not available, then the son of his half brother and his son, if isn't available, then his uncle, his full uncle, his paternal uncle basically. And if the uncle is not available, then his half uncle, his full uncle and his paternal uncle. And after that, the full uncle's son, the half uncle's son. And the 11th category is a person who has freed that person from slavery. So when there used to be slavery in the world, someone who frees a slavery becomes related to that person immediately, and they inherit them if there's no one else to inherit them. So they also have the right to watch them. Of course, after that, the Imam of the Muslims, the leader, or the deputy of the leader, should watch the body. If there's no one else to watch, then every male person who is related, but not from the categories mentioned, can also watch the body. And if there's no one to do that, then any male can watch the body. And if that is not available, then his wife should watch the body. If she's not available, then any female relative can watch the body if they are mahram. Ladies have a very similar order, nearly identical, but the Imam and his deputy, of course, would not watch the body of the lady. Okay. After that, inshallah, I'm going to clothing. So, before we go to clothing, any questions? Regarding Ghusul? Any questions?
There's no sidr, what's the most preferred thing to use? Or you just leave that?
There's no sidr?
Yeah.
What I remember is that you use soap or anything that can generally, our scholars say soap works as sidr, work the same as sidr, or similar to sidr in most cases.
Is perfume or coal allowed after the
Perfume should be added in between the shrubs, between the cloths that is referenced. We'll get to that inshallah. So there should be perfume on the cloths so that it smells nice, of course, when he is
like coal in the eyes?
kuhul in the eyes. I don't remember really getting over, but inshallah maybe I'll revise and see if it's mentioned in any books. I don't remember any kuhul. Okay, so after that, clothing. The second obligation that we have to do is to clothe the person who's passed away. Now, what is the minimum clothing that we have to do? And what is the preferred way to clothe someone? The minimum depends on the case of the person. If this person has ordered not to be clothed with other than one piece of clothing that covers his awrah, or the person has so many debts that it occupies all of his wealth, so he's not able to freely spend his money, and the people who he has a debt for are all asking for their money, and they don't allow us to buy extra clothes for them. In this case, we can use one piece of material that covers his whole entire body that is significant, but only in this case. So we use his money to buy one piece of clothing and khalas. If this is not the case, and we are clothing them from their own money, okay? So if someone else's money and they only allow one piece of clothing, then we also can't do anything about that. We use one piece of clothing, but if we're using their money, then we don't need permission from the people inheriting them to use 3 pieces of clothing. This is a compulsory thing that we have to do for the person who passed away, to clothe them with 3 pieces of cloth. So the minimum for other than the person mentioned before that is 3 pieces of clothing that covers his whole entire body. 3 pieces that cover the whole entire body, unless the person is an ihram, is going to Hajj or Umrah and pass away before finishing. This person is covered other than the face of a lady and the head of a of the main. How do we close someone? So with a main, it's very simple. You get 3 large pieces of cloth that are the same size. You put them down, you put the person on top, and then you wrap 1 around him, 2 around him, and 3, and then you're done. It's that simple. And this is the preferred way to close someone. It's preferred to do it like that. You are allowed to add qamis, similar to a thawb, something that it was from the top down, and also a turban. Put a turban on it. That's allowed, but it's not preferred. It is not preferred in fiqh to do that. Okay? When it comes to a lady, then we wrap her in 2 cloths, twice, not once, and then we add an izar from the bottom, similar to a skirt. But then a qamis, something on the top, and then a khimar also, similar to a hijab or prayer gown, because it's more, of course, covering for her to have more layers around her. And then, because when carrying the body, of course, some of the layers might be exposed, and that would be disrespectful to her. So for that reason, there's extra clothing and with lady. And this is the preferred way, because there's other ways to clothe people, but this is the preferred way. After that, carrying the body. How do we carry the body? So any kind of carrying is significant. If you carry the person in a helicopter, it counts. If you carry them on a bed, it counts. If you carry them on a plank, it counts. And the best way is to have 2 poles. So similar to a plank that has 2 wooden or 2 sides that you can hold onto, and the person is carried between these 2 poles. That is the preferred way to carry someone. It's haram to carry the person in a disrespectful manner. In fiqh, they say, for example, if you put him in a small little container or something, and you something really disrespectful, that's haram. So we have to respect the person who's being carried, or else we are sinful. And it's also haram if we fear that the person might fall off. So it's not safe. We're carrying them in an unsafe manner, then it's also haram. We have to make sure that it's fitted and safe, and that he will not fall off, or she will not fall off. Now, it's encouraged for men to follow the janazah, walking behind her, on the sides of her, close to her, but to walk with the janazah. And it's this encouraged for ladies to follow the janazah, as Salama radiallahu anha says in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, نهينا عن اتباع الجنائز ولم يعزم علينا. We were advised not to follow the janazah, but it was not made compulsory on us not to follow the janazah. So the lady insists on following the janazah, it's not haram for them to do that. They're not sinful if they do that, but it's not preferred. Now, it's sunnah to walk with the janazah, and it's disliked to ride behind the janazah. To ride. It's better to walk. Unless it's not possible, then we can ride. Even if a person has a high status, so they are a leader or a king or something like that, they should also walk, and they're not exempted from walking. They should walk and they should not ride. They're not exempted from walking because it's not respectful, of course, to the person who passed away. It's not out of humbleness to do so in this situation. And Rasulullah wouldn't only walk, but if he saw a janazah walking past, he would stand up. And once he was with his companions, and they passed him with a janazah of a Jewish person, Yahudi, and he stood up. He said, Ya Rasulullah, innaha janazah Yahudi, it's janazah of a Yahudi. This is in Sahih Bukhari. He said, أَوَلَيْسَ نَفْسًا? He said, isn't it a soul? Isn't it a person? That's enough for us to stand up and respect. So in the funeral, we should have that kind of respect around us. Any questions?
Sometimes you see when people enter the cemetery, they'll remove the shoes to walk in the cemetery. Is that within the Shafi'i Mathhab as well?
So, removing the shoes to walk in the cemetery, of course, I believe that it's an older matter. That you should remove your shoes to walk in the cemetery if it is not going to harm you, the ground of the cemetery is going to harm you, then you should walk without our shoes on. And there's a clear hadith about this in Sunan Nisa'i or Sunan Abu Dawud, that Rasulullah saw someone with shoes on in the graveyard. And he said, Ya hada, alqi anka na'alik. Take your shoes off, remove them. Don't walk with your shoes in the graveyard. Don't walk with your shoes between the people who are dead. So graveyards are like an environment where people live in. And you have to respect that in this manner. Abu Shujā رحمه الله تعالى says after this, ويكبر عليه 4 تكبيرات يقرأ الفاتحة بعد الأولى ويصلي على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد الثانية ويدعو للميت بعد الثالثة فيقول اللهم هذا عبدك وابن عبدك خرج من روح الدنيا وسعتها ومحبوبيه وأحبائه فيها إلى ظلمة القبر وما هو لاقيه كان يشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم عبدك ورسولك وأنت أعلم به منا اللهم إنه نزل بك وأنت خير نزول به وأصبح فقيرا إلى رحمتك وأنت غني عن عذابه وقد جئناك راغبين إليك شفعاء له اللهم إن كان محسنا فزد في إحسانه وإن كان مسيئا فتجاوز عنه ولقه برحمتك رضاك وقه فتنة القبر وعذابه وافسح له في قبره وجاء في الأرض عن جنبه ولقه برحمتك الأمن من عذابك حتى تبعثه آمنا إلى جنتك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين ويقول في الرابعة اللهم لا تحرمنا أجره ولا تفتنا بعده واغفر لنا وله يسلم بعد الرابعة.
The funeral prayer. During the prayer, Allahu Akbar is said over the deceased 4 times. After saying it the first time, one reads Al-Fatiha. After the second, one recites prayers over the Prophet ﷺ. After the third one, supplicates for the deceased, saying, O Allah, this is your servant, son of 2 of your servants. He has left the comfort of this world and its abundance, and the things he loved, and the people who loved him, onto the darkness of the grave, and what waits ahead. We testify that there is no deity except you only, without partner, and that Muhammad ﷺ is your slave and messenger, and you are more knowledgeable of him than we are. O Allah, verily he has gone to remain with you, and you are the best with whom one could remain. He has become in need of your mercy, while you have no need to torture him. We have come to you seeking for him your intercession. O Allah, if he was good, then increase him in goodness. If he was wicked, then forgive him and meet him with your mercy and your satisfaction with him. Protect him from the trial of the grave and its torture. Make his grave spacious for him and spread the ground away from his flanks. And through your mercy meet him with amnesty from your torture until you resurrect him to his paradise in safety. By your mercy, O merciful of the merciful. During the 4th one says, O Allah, do not deprive us of his reward, nor afflict us after him. O Allah, grant us and him forgiveness. After the 4th one says, Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, so Janazah prayer. How do we do Janazah prayer? Now, the pillars of this prayer are the most important thing to understand, and then we get to the Sunnah parts of the prayer. How do we do the minimum Janazah prayer? Number 1, we intend to pray the compulsory Janazah prayer. So every Janazah prayer is compulsory. Janazah prayer is not Sunnah, it's compulsory. It's like Fard. Why? Because it's compulsory upon us to pray upon someone who passed away. Yes, it's not compulsory for every single Muslim to do it, only good Muslims need to do it, but it's still considered a compulsory prayer. Fard Kifaya, basically. Compulsory prayer that needs to be done by good Muslims. So we intend to pray compulsory Janazah prayer. Do we need to intend the name of the person we're praying on? Or is it enough to intend to pray on the person in front of us? It's enough to intend to pray on the person that is in front of you, the person that Imam prays on, or the people that Imam is praying on. That's enough. Unless you're praying on a specific individual overseas. So in some cases, we are allowed to pray on people overseas who are not with us. In that case, if it's one person, a specific person, you need to intend them individually. But if you're just praying on the Muslims who passed away this week, for example, then you don't need to individually intend the person you're praying. Now, Janazah prayer needs to be done with 4 takbeers. If you add extra takbeers, your prayer is still correct, but 4 takbeers is compulsory. You need to stand when possible, because it's fard, it's compulsory prayer. we need to recite Fatiha after any one of the 4 takbeers. Doesn't have to be done after the first takbeer. It's sunnah to be done after the first takbeer, but it's not compulsory to do it after any takbeer. Number 2, Salat Al Janazah after the second takbeer. Number 3, dua for the deceased person after the third takbeer. Dua for him or for her with something regarding the next life. So Allah forgive them for that. That's a dua that will be considered fine. And then salam at the end of this. So after the 4th takbir, you don't need to do anything, but it's sunnah to say Allahumma ighfir lana wa lahu, Allahumma la tahrimna ajrah wa la taftina ba'dah. Oh Allah, don't deprive us from his reward, and don't make us from people who are misguided after this person's left us. Okay. Like I said, the compulsory part of these parts, but then the sunnah is to add all the additional parts that the author mentioned, and of course what I mentioned also. After that, Abu Shujā says, وَيُدْفَنُ فِي لَحْدٍ مُسْتَقْبِلِ الْقِبْلَةِ وَيُسَلُّ مِنْ قِبَلِ رَأْسِهِ بِرِفْقٍ وَيَقُولُ الَّذِي يَلْحَدُهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ وَعَلَى مِلَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم وَيُضْجَعُ فِي الْقَبْرِ بَعْدَ أَنْ يُعَمَّقَ قَامَةً وَبَسْطًا ويسطح القبر ولا يبنى عليه ولا يجصص ولا بأس بالبكاء على الميت من غير نوح ولا شق جيب ويعزى أهله إلى 3 أيام من دفنه ولا يدفن 2 في قبر واحد إلا لحاجة.
Burial. The deceased is buried in a trench grave, facing the direction of prayer. He is lowered gently into the grave head first from the direction where his feet will rest. The person who places him in the grave should say, Bismillah wa ala millati Rasulillah, in the name of Allah and according to the religion of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The deceased should be placed in the grave on his right side after the grave has been dug deep enough that one can stand and extend his arms without his fingertips extending beyond the grave. The grave is made level with the surrounding ground. It should not be built upon or covered with gypsum. There is no harm in crying over the deceased provided one does not wail or rip one's collar. Condolences are given to the family of the deceased for up to 3 days after his burial. 2 individuals are not buried in a single grave except out of necessity.
Okay. So, when it comes to burying someone, the minimum compulsory burial is to bury the person deep enough for the smell of the dead body not to be noticeable at all. So a hole that is deep enough that it covers and it hides the smell of the body. Number 2, it also protects the body from being dug up by animals. So some animals, if the body is very close to the earth, they will dig it up and eat the body. It has to be deep enough that this cannot happen. If you do that, then you've done the compulsory burial. It's sunnah to be extremely deep. To be extremely deep. And some scholars, they say that even in the Quran, there's an ayah that kind of indicates this. وَقَالُوا إِذَا ضَلَلْنَا فِي الْأَرْضِ They say to Allah, are we going to be resurrected after we've been lost deep down in the earth? So we should go deep down into the earth. How deep should we go? A moderate man should be able to stand in the grave and raise his hands, spread his hands up, and not reach, or reach the top. So it should be as long as a normal man who spreads his hand up. So that's how long it should be. Now, there's 2 ways to bury a person. Of course, I talked about this in Safinat al-Najah. There is shat and lahd. Shat means that the body has the grave has 3 sections to it. There's a section in the middle of the grave that is deeper than the 2 sides. So there's a right side, left side that are elevated, and then there's a deeper part in the middle. So it's like a river or a trench in the middle, and the person is put in that part in the middle. And this is done when the earth is not strong enough for us to dig a hole in the side. So in countries like Australia, the mud is very wet in most cases, so the person is buried in the middle of the grave. If the earth is dry and strong, then the sunnah is to do what Abu Shujā mentioned, which is not to bury the person in the middle, but to put them on the side of the grave. So you dig a deep hole, and in that hole you dig another little room in the corner on the side, and you put the person on the side, on his side facing the Qibla. So there's a hole and then there's a little room in the corner, and that person is laid on their side facing the Qibla in that hole, and then we put the bricks on top of that, and then we put dirt on top of the bricks, and that's it. That's how we get the person. We shouldn't go too high, and we shouldn't build upon random graves. If the graveyard is owned by someone else, if the graveyard is owned by the Muslim population, it's off. It's not owned by you. You don't own the land that you're buried in. If the Muslims generally own it, then it's haram to take up the space of the graveyard by building something large around the grave. So building a large room or something around the grave when the graveyard is not yours is haram. It's haram because you are occupying the space of another Muslim. If it's yours, if you own it, if someone is buried in a house on a land that they own, then it's not haram to build around the grave, although it's not preferred to do so. It's not preferable to do so. Now, like the author says, crying, there's no harm in crying over the deceased, but it can't reach the level when the person starts to harm themselves, say bad things, rip their clothes, scream. These things are not permissible in Islam. Condolences in Islam are given to the family for 3 days, and that's it. After 3 days, it becomes disliked, it becomes makruh to do so in the Shafi'i Mathhab. In other madhabs, it becomes haram. So it's very important that condolences are only done in 3 days, because in Islam, we're supposed to get on with life after that. We don't sit for years crying about someone and not getting on with life. Death is not the end. Death is another life, like we said at the start of this class, and death is not a negative thing. We are people, we have feelings, and that's why we have 3 days to mourn and feel the person. And if the husband of a lady dies, then it's not 3 days, it is, how long is it? So, 4 months and 4 months and 10 days, yes. 4 أشهر وعشرة. So the lady, of course, she stays at home. She only leaves when it's needed to, when she needs to leave. And she doesn't wear excessive perfume and clothing. She wears decent clothes, but not something excessive. And this is just to show respect to her husband, because the bond of marriage in Islam is the highest importance. Allah Ta'ala alam sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we finished Salah. And next class, inshallah, we'll try to see if we can do the whole book of Zakat.
Just a few questions. In regards to buying grave when you're still alive and your kids are alive.
Yes. So you buy the land, and then you bury it. Yeah. So if you own the land, then you are free to build on it if you want, but like I said, it's not permissible, it's not recommended to do so.
Burying a relative, and then after 5 years or 10 years, you bury the next relative, the wife.
The same grave.
Yeah.
Okay. So burying someone in the same grave depends on the case. Now, if the bodies are still fresh, there's not only bones there, then this is only done in extreme cases. For example, people pass away and there's a mass death, and we need to bury more than one person in the same grave, then we can bury people in the same grave for the necessity only. But other than that, we need to be buried individually. If, in some cases, another person wants to be buried in the same grave, then we need to wait until the body no longer exists. And then, if there's a need, we can of course bury the person in the same grave after that. So we would usually move the bones, of course, or bury them on top, but only after the body has totally disappeared, and there's only bones left.
It has to be mahram, or doesn't matter?
Like if you go to the Baqiyah now, in Medina, all the graves are reused. In Islam, most of the graveyards are reused. Graves that are not reused are very minimal in Islam. Muslims didn't own that many areas of land in the history, so they would always reuse graves. And in fiqh, if a graveyard is reused, then it becomes najis. The whole graveyard becomes najis because the body and blood is all mixed with the dirt. So that's also something interesting. In that case, we don't pray on that graveyard. We don't pray janazah. In the graveyard, you have to put something down and then pray on top of that thing. So you take your shoes off, you stand on top of your shoes and you pray. You don't stand with your shoes on the ground in front and pray, because the graveyard is considered najis in Islam.
In regards to washing a dead body, if it's of the opposite gender, do you have to use like a barrier, like a ha'id, or do you not have to keep the wudu?
No, we don't need to keep the wudu of the dead person. All we have to do is to do the ghusl.
And with covering that, do you have to cover the awra throughout, or how do
We cover the awra in all types of washing, but the only person who's going to wash the dead person is a relative. They can still touch them and stuff. But of course, when washing the private parts, you cover your hand with the cloth and then you wash it. But you don't wash it with the dead parts.
The Shafi'i opinion on reciting the Quran for someone that's deceased, etiquette with that?
Sending the reward of Quran or also saying Quran?
Reciting Quran for someone who's already passed away.
Okay. So reciting Quran for someone who's passed away. Now, the majority of fuqaha in Islam believe that if we were to send the rewards of what we do, reciting Quran for someone, and send the rewards of this Quran, so we intend by reciting Quran for the rewards to go to someone, that it immediately goes to the person. This is the opinion of Imam Ahmad, and majority of scholars of Islam, they believe that the rewards immediately go to that person. So we recite Quran for that person. Imam Shafi'i, his madhab is that the rewards do not go to the person unless we make dua for the rewards to go to the person. So we recite and say, Ya Allah, give the same reward to that person that I got. In that case, it goes. So most of the Muslims throughout history have been doing this action built on the other madhabs, which is that the reward goes to the amazing person. But the Shafi'i scholars said, just in case, it's good to also add to that after you read, you make dua for Allah to give them the rewards of the recitation. That way, inshallah, the rewards will be sent to him according to all opinions, inshallah. But of course, it's an encouraged act to do according to the practice of the majority of scholars. And it's been the practice of Muslims throughout history also. So that's something to consider, of course.
In the graveyard, like there's a custom in Indonesia, every Ramadan they take the mushaf and they'll read from it in the graveyard, things like this, the Quran.
Yeah. So doing something in a certain time of the year is permissible. If it's a lesser time of the year, if it's a good time, then there's nothing wrong with that. It's not really any issue as long as it's originally and it's not permissible to be one for a person. You can do it every year or every Ramadan, or we gather for it. These are all means and just different ways of doing the same act, which is permissible in Islam. So what's the point of Islam?
Can you take that into the cemetery?
Why not?
It's okay.
They're not going to put the mushaf on the najasa, holy clothes. Okay, so how do you wash relatives without seeing anything inappropriate? Should be washing clothes. So generally, a person, some of us have mentioned that everyone should be washed clothed. When you wash a person, they're not fully naked. Yeah? You cover them and you wash them. It's better to have a cloth that water can go through. Okay? So we don't uncover the private parts unless we need to. But generally, we cover them if they can be in a clothing that has water go through it, that's good. If not, we can still have something prominent from the top and we can spread water underneath, but we don't just uncover the aura and have the private parts showing to yourself whoever's there. That's not respectful. They should be covered when washed, when prayed on, and all cases of times. Inshallah. Is there one more question? So, in the Shafi'i opinion, does the reciter get and the person get the reward, unlike other madhabs, where the entire reward of the reciter goes to the person? So, yes, according to the Shafi'i opinion, if you recite the Quran then you ask Allah to give them the reward, then inshallah we hope that you will both get the reward. Inshallah, not only the person.